Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Transfer Talk podcast, the best place for all the latest transfer news and analysis. I am Dharmesh, Sheth. Delighted to say I'm joined, as usual, by ESPN Sam Tighe and the legend that is Julien Laurent. Now, I've got a bit of an issue with this intro, actually. This was written by our producer, John Walton, and he has only given Julien the status of legendary. Whereas we all know, Sam, you are a legend in my eyes as well. But before you talk, we do need to just have a quick word with Julien, despite saying all of that. Julien, if there was an award for, the most busy person in sports media, you would be amongst the nominees. How's your week been?
It's been a bit mental. Thank you, Dams. Thank you for the nice word from John as well, producer John. It's good to be with you guys on the show. It's been crazy. When my alarm went off at 4 a.m. this morning in Marseille to catch this 6 a.m. flight back to London, I kind of regretted a lot of my life choices, including having children that I need to feed, and that's why I do so much work, but it's all good. It's all good.
It's all good. And what else is all good is Sam Tighe. You're a resident Aston Villa fan as well as being a friend of the show, I think.
Sorry, downgraded from legend very fast there to friend of the show. Has John been in your ear again?
Well, who says that's a downgrade? Friend of the show, who knows? That could be a lot better.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something about Villa, actually, because Unai Emery's been at it again. A few weeks ago, he said, no, we're not contending for the title. Now, talking about downgrades, he's saying that we're not even contending in the top 5 in the Premier League. Should we take that on face value, or is it just a kind of thinly veiled message to the board? Get me some players.
Well, I think he wants players, but this is pretty consistent with what Unai Emery does, which is lower expectations as much as possible at every turn. So my interpretation here is always that whenever you speak to Unai Emery about Aston Villa in the Champions League, he always corrects you and says, no, not Champions League, Europe. It's his belief that Villa, to be in Europe, whichever of the 3 competitions, every single year, is success. So he doesn't like it when people just pigeonhole it to top 5 or top 4 or nothing. So he's just being consistent, and hopefully he's not too annoyed about the fact that he doesn't have too much of a squad to utilise right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the word annoyed there, because that moves us swiftly on to Crystal Palace. Oh, to be a Crystal Palace fan just now. What a couple of weeks it has been. They suffered possibly the worst FA Cup shock in history when Macclesfield knocked them out as the holders. Oliver Glasner's press conference on Friday, I think, can be summed up in one word: caps lock wow. That's 3 words, but it was the wow. It was the wow that I was going for there. First of all, he announces that captain Mark Tighe was in the final stages of a deal to leave and join Manchester City. Then just popped it in there. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to be here next season. I'm leaving at the end of the season. And if that wasn't enough, it was almost a sidebar, and it would have been the top story had it been that on its own and not the Tighe stuff and himself about what his future was as manager. Jean-Philippe Mateta, yes, he can leave as long as the price is right. And then they lose 2-1 at Sunderland, and it was box office. That post-match interview, we feel we've been abandoned. We've got no support from the club. So, Julien, quiet week then for Palace and Glasner. What do you make of it all? Has he got a point? Does he have a right to feel let down here?
Yeah, I can see his frustration, sure, because I think you just came out of the greatest season in club history. You won the FA Cup, you qualified for Europe, you had some big results, you improved some players that then you sell on to bring a lot of money within the club. Eze, Olise, Tighe. Okay, Tighe the price is not the value of the player because he's got 6 months left on his contract. But for the other 2, you just brought 120 million to your football club in just selling 2 of the players that Glasner helped to make world-class players, really. So I can see his frustration. I also think that as a club, you're together and you should not come out publicly like that and have a go at the board, because when they won last season, it's not just Glasner on his own. It's Glasner and the board and the club, the fans, the players, the recruitment team, the analysis team, the tea lady, everything. They were all together and he was very happy then. And I know now he feels frustrated, and I think you would be, because he probably felt he deserved a bigger squad. not so much in terms of talent, because you can't replace Gueye by a player of his level right now. Same with Olise, same with Eze. You have to buy younger players that you would make into an Eze and an Olise and a Gueye. But still, I don't think they've reinvested that money like they should have.
Yeah, he used the word annoyed, Jules did there, Sam. I think that's probably an understatement. The Palace fans will be absolutely gutted as well about how the last couple of weeks have turned out. But if we are looking at this maybe a little bit cynically, is this the unfortunate reality of being a Premier League club like Crystal Palace, maybe Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, who have similar models, and that's what happens if you're not in the so-called Big Six?
Yeah, I mean, it is a harsh reality. Some of the financial rules in the Premier League do kind of cement this as well. And Palace are going to be committed to running a pretty responsible ship, so they're not going to try and overspend. But from Glasner's perspective here, he was probably expecting them to use this as a bounce board, as a platform to raise expectations and ambitions and really go for it. And for whatever reason, Palace have not really followed suit. So I do feel for him there. But the reality is, you mentioned Brighton and Bournemouth there. They're in similar situations where when they fly sort of too close to the sun, or they're too impressive, too many of their top talents get picked off. Those two clubs are in the business of continually refurnishing the squad ahead of time. So Brighton have that conveyor belt effect where they've already recruited the next Moises Caicedo, and Bournemouth do it as well. You know, we're going to talk about a player in a little bit that they signed from Hungary, which is strikingly similar to another midfielder they already have that everyone likes. Palace had not reached that point because their success was so sudden that they weren't really able to get that conveyor belt moving. And to Jules's point, they have about 14 players. Like, it's unacceptable to run through a European campaign and a full Premier League campaign with the amount of senior pros that they actually have that Glasner can use.
Julien, Sam got a point there. And when we talk about some of these big clubs, so-called big clubs, is it just a sad and harsh reality that we live in now in the Premier League, that only a tiny percentage of the clubs are going to be able to keep hold of their best players?
Yeah, but I think this is not. There's nothing new there. This has been the case for a long time. Bayern Munich have kept getting the best players of other German clubs. In Italy, you often see that a club doing really well for a smaller a player doing really well for a smaller club, and then gets picked up by one of the biggest clubs. This is the way it is, and this is the circle of life of football anyway. I think Palace also need to sell those players. Okay, maybe not so much when you play in the Premier League because TV rights are so high, but in France, for example, or even in Germany, you're a feeder club, and that's your model. You need to be like that. So this is the way. I think Palace fans are under no illusions that this is the case. And then when Eze leaves, you can't really keep him at the club because this is the move that he's dreamt of, and he deserves to play in the Champions League for a club like Arsenal. Same for Gueye, same for Olise. So then you do your best to replace them, and to go from Olise to Ismail Assar is not bad. To go from Eze to Yemi Pino, it's not bad either. But again, they're not at the level of the two guys they replaced. Let's see who they get as a centre-back to replace Gueye, but it would be exactly the same dynamic. And I know it's difficult, but in 2 or 3 years' time, those players might be at the level of Eze and Olise, and you start that cycle again. But I think Sam made a great point about that conveyor belt. Maybe since Dougie Friedman left Palace as well, if it felt they were a little bit unprepared by what happened in the summer and the departure of Eze, and especially even more with Gueye, both in the summer and this January.
Yeah, Julien mentioned Gueye there. Sam, it has been confirmed that his move to Manchester City is done and dusted. Looking at their injuries just now, you can expect Marc Gueye to get a lot of game time. Have you still got a few reservations about his game time when everyone's fit there?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to come straight in. I mean, that City defensive line, been watching it for the last couple of weeks, ever since Ruben Dias and Josko Gvardiol were injured. They certainly need someone like Marc Gueye to come in. So the short-term playing time is fine. The long-term stuff, I remember you asking me the question a couple of weeks ago, like, what, where's the easier playing time to find long-term? Is it Liverpool or is it City? And the answer to me felt like Liverpool because of the Ibrahima Konate contract situation, the fact that Van Dijk was starting to show slight signs of decline, and the impending feeling that Liverpool were about to change up their backline quite considerably. But injuries aside here, for City, Ruben Dias, Josko Gvardiol is pretty set. So Gueye now enters that kind of rotation. Now, City play tons of games. He'll get plenty of game time. He's a really good player. I'm a big fan. But he is going to go from a situation where he starts every week without question as captain to fighting for a spot. It's a big step, and I hope he's up to the challenge.
Guys, we'll talk Jean-Philippe Mateta in just a moment. But Julien, I just want to get your thoughts on Manchester City. They've spent £445 million in the last 12 months alone. And yet we are still talking about, well, there's still a few holes in that squad they need to fill. What have you made of it?
I think the transfers they made last January, so a year ago, I think we can say now it's a year on. They were failures. They were the wrong people. From Vitor Reis, who's doing well in Spain. This is not. I'm not having a dig at his level. Same for Kusanov. There's just not Manchester City players. They're not ready for that kind of level. Marmoush was a mistake. Fair enough. And Nico. He's a good player, but he's nowhere near the value that you paid for him, and certainly not good enough again to be a starter for City, a City team that can win stuff. It could be a really good backup, but not as a starter. So that January is gone. Last summer, Cherki, as you both know, I love, obviously, and I think he's had a really good impact. Reinders, I think the jury is still out a little bit. There's some really good things. There's other games where he's on the bench, and when he comes on, there's not enough impact there. Nuri, a failure. And I think you go down that list up to this January, which is a little bit different because I think Tighe and Semenyo could be game changers for them. But they've got a lot of things wrong in all that money they spend, Dharm, that you just mentioned. And I think at that level, when the others are not getting much wrong, to be fair, I think this is a big problem.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's happening at City. As promised, Sam, let's go back to Palace and Jean-Philippe Mateta. Look, Jules mentioned it earlier, Elise, Eze, Tighe, and now Jean-Philippe Mateta potentially leaving as well. He has said now that he wants to leave. Palace, well, it would take a significant offer according to them because he's still got 18 months left on his contract. They cannot be in a position where they found themselves in with Mark Tighe, clearly. Aston Villa are interested. Juventus are interested as well. What level of striker do you think Mateta is? And from a Villa perspective, because they're interested in Tammy Abraham as well, which would be the best bet, Mateta or Tammy?
Yeah, I mean, Mateta's had a really good 2.5 years, hasn't he, at Premier League level? He's scored 38 league goals during that time, and he's done something that quite a lot of players have tried to come in and do and frankly failed to do, which is to play up front on your own at the Premier League level. So have enough about you to be able to hold off a defence, occupy defenders on your own, hold up the ball, give your team a couple of seconds, and obviously pitch in with the goals as well. So I'm a big fan of Mateta. He's really good. It's harder than it looks to hold on to the ball for 5 seconds when it's been punted at you and there's no one anywhere near you. And he does it really well. Although I will say the last couple of months, he's looked below par. And I don't know if it's simply a case of he's playing through an injury or if he is knackered, because a lot of those Palace players are playing pretty much every minute available to them in 4 competitions. Lacroix, Richards until he went down, Mateta, they're all being overworked because of the squad size issue. But generally speaking, I'm a big fan of his. Now, whether or not from Villa's perspective, Tammy Abraham or Mateta is the right call, well, it depends on the price, doesn't it, Dharmesh? And it depends what the significant offer might be for Mateta. I don't know what the figures are.
Yeah, Julien, I know you're a big fan of the Paris born and bred Jean-Philippe Mateta. What is the best option for him? Is it Juventus? Is it Aston Villa? Or maybe even staying at Crystal Palace? Because remember, there is the small matter of a World Cup coming up in the summer.
Yeah, you're right. There's the World Cup. I think he also feels that if he goes to a bigger club that maybe plays in the Champions League, like Juventus, for example, who I think that ship might have gone. I think they want an easy arena. The price that Palace wanted for Mateta put them off a little bit, I think. But you also could see it from the other angle in the sense that if you play for a bigger club in the Champions League, there might be more chances for Deschamps to call you up and put you in that 26-man squad for the World Cup. I think for everything he went through his career, especially at the beginning, because he was not an easy start of his career, the trajectory was not as linear as a lot of the players that we know. I think he's earned a big move. I think he earns a big club. He's earned a big club. I don't know if he would play a lot Juventus, for example, considering they've got Vlahovic, okay, who's injured, but also Panda and Jonathan David. But I think he he dreams of that kind of move. Really, it's nothing against Crystal Palace. They've been great to him. He's become a cult hero there. All the goals that Sam mentioned that he scored, the FA Cup, Europe, etc., etc. But I think there's that feeling in him, whether it's now in January, maybe more likely in the summer, that he could have. He turns 29 in the summer as well. That he can have finally that big move that he's dreamed all his life, and I think that would be fair.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of offer that would be significant enough for Crystal Palace to accept, particularly in a transfer window where it's notoriously hard to do deals, because they will definitely want to bring in a replacement as well. And there's only, less than 2 weeks of this window remaining. Julien, just staying with you, it's not all doom and gloom, is it, for Palace with regard to transfers? They're after Sidiki Cherif. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I'm sure you'll correct me. Oh, thank goodness for that. It's on loan with an obligation to buy. It could be worth £13.1 million. What can you tell us about him?
He's a very promising young player whose breakthrough season, really, this one in Ligue 1 has been really impressive. In a team like Angers that is a bit struggling. I mean, not so much in terms of points and where they are in the table, but in the way they play. So there's a lot of things that he has to do on his own, but he holds the ball up really well. He suits Palace so well. If you think about a young Mateta in a way, although I think that he's maybe a little bit even better technically than Mateta is, it's just the perfect fit. It's the perfect fit for this system, certainly. I don't know who's going to come after Glasner, and the system might change and the way they play might change. But for now, it worked. The only thing is he's 19. He hasn't played much first-team football, certainly at the top level. There's a lot of things he needs to learn. And I'm just not sure how ready he would be if Mateta was to leave. And Nketiah can play, Brennan Johnson can play as a 9, and he would just be the backup of the backup potentially. I get that. But yeah, again, to go back to the point that we were making, when you lose a Guehi or Mateta or Lise Eze, you replace them by somebody who's nowhere near at that level yet. And that's I think, a bit difficult for the manager, for even the fans to say, okay, we're spending that much money, but this guy is going to need a good year to get ready for Premier League level. A bit like JD Convo, who they signed from Toulouse last summer, who's a super promising Paris-born and bred defender. Great. He will be great. But right now, he's not ready to play every week in the Premier League. And that would be the same for Cherif. So this is the dilemma, I guess, that the club has. Where do you go next to replace somebody like Mateta? Do you go very young and raw like Sidiki, like him? Or do you go for somebody a bit more proven that is older, that you might pay a bit more money for, but that will be ready to play straight away?
Yes, Sam, do you agree with Jules there? Is it a good option for Palace? Does he fit in to what Palace would try and do and into their system? Or is this one, let's just be patient if he does come in and bring in someone else that's a bit more experienced first?
I mean, it's exactly the kind of signing that Palace should be looking at. Anybody in the middle order of the Premier League should be looking at a player like Sidiki Cherif. And to hammer the point home, by the way, he has just turned 19 last month. That he's very, very inexperienced. He's played about 1,500 league minutes in his entire senior career. And when you watch him, there are some rough points, sure, but we talk about doing a lot with a little. I mean, this guy, he's up front on his own. There's no one within 30 yards of him. They punt the ball up to him and he runs the channel and he beats 2 players and fires off a shot. It's for £13 million. You pull the trigger and you go, let's see what I can do with that. Let's see what I can coach through that, because he's instinctive, he's direct and he's fast. He's got a really powerful shot. I've been pretty impressed with what he's managed to do in an Angers side that, as Jules alludes to, doesn't attack particularly well. There's a lot on his shoulders and he's on his own a lot of the time. 1v3, 1v4, and he keeps hold of the ball. So he does fit Palace. Ideally, though, they get to keep Mateta for 6 months and bring Cherif in and have him kind of redshirt that 6 months and learn a little bit about what it takes to play in the Premier League and take those steps, rather than dumping a player like this in and just say, come on then, let's try and win a Conference League and stay in the Premier League, because that's a lot to take on.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge talking point, isn't it, Crystal Palace, for the remainder of this window? Not only transfers, but of course the managerial situation as well. Listen, guys, a club that normally keeps us on our toes during every single transfer window is Chelsea. But unlike them, it's been pretty quiet at Stamford Bridge in terms of outgoings and incomings. Julien, they have, though, been linked with the centre-back Jeremy Jacquet from Rennes. He's rated at around £56 million. What can you tell us about him? Is he worth that price tag? Is he good enough right now to earn a starting spot in that Chelsea team?
He's been one of Ligue 1's best defender this season, best centre-backs, without a doubt. He's 20, but he's incredible. I really believe that. I think he reminds me, and they were a bit younger, but when Fofana and Saliba broke onto the scene for Saint-Etienne at the time, and again, they were 2 and 3 years younger. They were like him. They were so strong, so good, better than anybody else, pretty much in their age group or around that age in the league or in Europe. And he's the same. He's tall, he's strong, he's quick, he's good on the ball, he's smart, he's mature. He's great. That's why Rennes know that they have a very special player on their hands. That's why he probably will be the next one to be sold from them. He's part of that incredible 2005 generation, Désiré Doué, Mateta, Jacquet, Bellocian, that they had one in a lifetime kind of golden generation from your academy, same age group. And he's the next one. It's funny because a year ago, they called him back from his loan in the second division with Clermont. They had sent him over there because he was not really ready for Ligue 1 at the time. They didn't really believe that he could break into the first team at Rennes, and he needed to play because he was too good for the reserve team, but maybe not just good enough for the first team in Ligue 1. He was incredible in the second division. So they had to call him back. They had to pay €1 million to Clermont to say, sorry, guys, he's too good. We have to bring him back now. And now this is it. I don't think Chelsea will do that move now. I don't think they have the funds for a €60 million or pound player. But he's the next to go, and he will go for that amount, whether it's to Chelsea or somewhere else.
Sam, we spoke to Jules earlier about Manchester City and the amount that they've spent, and still we're looking at their squad thinking, oh, there's a few gaps in that squad. Are we looking at Chelsea in a similar way?
Yeah, for sure. We're always looking at Chelsea and thinking there's a few gaps, as long as they continue to stay true to a couple of their obvious transfer faults, which is they refuse to countenance the idea of bringing in experienced players for a start to age balance the squad. They refuse to address the goalkeeping position, and they refuse to address the true number 9 position. And while they do make some moves in general area, like João Pedro is a good player, I think he's really good, but they don't seem to care that much about solving the obvious problems that I can see and have seen for years, which would probably take them up a level. And they appear to be quite easily convinced that, Robert Sanchez is worth another go, and I think he's had a generally quite a good season this season, but then you're always a bit worried. When they went for Mike Maignan in the summer, I thought, finally, they've realised this, and then they sort of cooled off. I thought, why have you done that? That's really strange. So yeah, when you look at the amount of money that Chelsea have spent, and then you assess the quality of the team, it doesn't quite stack up. And that's probably because the amount of money that Chelsea have spent is tied up in the quantity of players that they've bought rather than the extreme quality of players. And as they continue to lead themselves short in a couple of areas, they continue to lead themselves short of Arsenal and Manchester City in the title stakes.
Jules, just speaking about Chelsea as a whole, and from the outside, we always look at it and think that there is a huge hierarchy in that football club, whereby the head coach is just there to do just that, and that is to coach. However, if we do look at some of the signings that Enzo Maresca made, he was allowed to bring in the likes of Kiernan Dewsbury Hall and Liam Delap, who he's worked with in some shape or form at previous jobs. Do you think, with that in mind, that Liam Rosenior will have any say or any influence on the players that could come in January and in forthcoming transfer windows?
I find it hard to believe, really. I think, okay, Dewsbury Hall was maybe the exception, and I think Maresca wanted him. They got him, and after that, they said to him, listen, that's the player you wanted? Look, he never even played for them. After that, Maresca had nothing to say in who they signed. Even for Delap, I think it was very much a club decision, and the 1 million sporting directors. I think it'd be the same with Liam. I think he will voice an opinion for sure, and Jacquet is a player that he knows well because he has faced him with Strasbourg in Ligue 1, for example. But I think he's very much, this is what we've given you. Now you have to work with this, improve those players, make them work, make them win, etc., etc. And that's the reality. I think Rosenior has accepted it. It's fine. But I agree with Sam too. They need experience. I think there's too much youth, too much naivety at times in the way they play, the way they defend, them collectively, to really take that squad into the right direction and the club towards winning Champions League and leagues again.
Sam, one player who, well, he's still young but has got getting growing experience both with club and country is, of course, Enzo Fernandez. Talk this week and speculation beginning to gather a bit of momentum about a potential move to Real Madrid. Liam Rossini has actually spoken and addressed that speculation, saying that Enzo is definitely a huge part of the future of Chelsea Football Club. Do you agree with Rossini, or is there somewhere along the line, because Chelsea are always open to big money moves for some of their players, is there an offer that would be too good to turn down for someone like Enzo?
Yeah, I mean, he's been linked to Real Madrid. He's also been spuriously linked to PSG as well. So someone's putting something out there on Enzo's behalf. Look, he's a very good player, but for very few players on this planet is there no offer worth entertaining. And for Enzo, I would look very closely at that if the figure got high enough. Now, bear in mind, he cost £105 million. Exactly. So I'm assuming that the figure is going to have to be pretty high. But if it's Real Madrid and PSG genuinely interested, then there's money to play with. I've found Enzo a really difficult player to assess. I'd be very interested in Jules' take on this as well, actually, because he's very obviously he's talented. And it's very obvious that he can fulfill multiple roles in midfield. He's a very energetic box-to-box player. He's sat deep in front of the defence and he's progressed the ball well. He's crashed into the box and he's scored goals. So technically, he's done every level of the Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard tree. And he's done it to a Premier League level. And yet there's something about him, like, it's about, I don't know if it's the partnerships that's not quite working, but when he plays with Caicedo, it doesn't work as well as I think it should on paper. There was that time at the end of the Pochettino reign where he got pubalgia, stepped out of the team. They won 6 in a row. They looked unbelievable. I can't get that out of my head. For whatever reason, the player I see in Enzo, and when it actually goes onto the pitch and it partners up, it doesn't quite stack up. And so from that perspective, I do not view him as one of these unsellable, untouchable assets that someone like Moises Caicedo or Cole Palmer would be, in my view.
Yeah, what do you think, Jules? Because Sam mentioned it there. He was bought for in excess of £100 million.
Yeah.
Is he still a £100 million player for you?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he ever was, to be fair. I agree with Sam. For me, he can't play in a double pivot for a top European club. He doesn't have the mobility. I'm not sure he's got the football IQ either. He might have energy, and he's a good late runner into the opposition box. Get that, he's decent in front of goals. Technical ability, obviously, is great. But I don't think he's worth that much money. I think he would struggle in a double pivot, even with a Caicedo next to him. That's why, like Sam, when I see them together, it's not clicking for me. It's not working. But if you turn it around, and from an Enzo point of view, and I think this could be a problem that Chelsea eventually, inevitably, will have with their best players, is that he would be there and say, okay, guys, it's great to have this young squad and we love each other and we're bonding and we are all friends and brothers, all of that. But I won the World Cup. I want to win the Champions League. And I'm not getting closer here to win the Champions League. And I want to win the Premier League. And I'm not closer to win the Premier League here either. And I think one day Cole Palmer will be the same. He said, this is all great. Thank you for giving me the platform to show what I can do when City didn't believe in me, when I was young, all of that. But now I want to win. And if Chelsea can't give those players, Caicedo, Enzo, Palmer, I don't know, maybe others, Neto, I don't know, João Pedro, whoever, the tools and the thing to win, they're going to want to go somewhere else where they would be able to win.
Yeah, I think it speaks again to what Sam was mentioning earlier about trying to bring in experience into that squad and whether that would help. Julien, just one other question I want to ask you. It's about Axel Disasi. Whenever you hear that name, you immediately say bomb squad, because that's where he is.
What's the French term for that, Jules? Is it in the loft or something?
The loft, yeah, we call it the loft, as in like the loft in your house, you know?
Okay, so Axel Disasi is in the loft at the moment.
He's in the loft.
Well, he's just come out the loft.
But apparently the ladder...
he's come out the loft.
Yeah, the ladder has been... the loft is up at the top of the house, yeah?
Yeah.
So the ladder has been unfurled, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It is there. He's stepped down that ladder. He is now back in first team training. Is that with the view to him coming back into Liam Rossini's thinking, or do you think there's no way back for him realistically in that first team?
I guess with the Tosin injury, you think that, and obviously Colwill has been a long time injury, and Fofana probably still not being able to play 3 games in a week. you think, you know what, we might need this guy, Disasi, even on the bench, just in case something happens to one of the starters. Let's bring him back, and at least it gives him a bit of rhythm, gives me a bit of time with the first team, because you just don't know. We might need him at some point. And I think that's it. If Jacquet signs or they sign another centre back, then I think Disasi will go and find another club, because he has to play. I feel a little bit for him. But for now, I think Rossinier is doing the right thing, saying like, we had another injury in Tosin. We've got, Shaloba and Archampong, and then Fofana, who, as we said, is fragile. Let's be honest here. You can have other options, sure, but why not just bring Disasi back with the squad, and he can take part of training sessions. He might show what he can do. He might not do much, but at least he will be there. And if we need to put him on the bench, he can be on the bench and be an option in case something bad happens again to one of the starters. I think it's quite a smart move.
Yeah, as he descended that ladder from the loft, Sam, he left Raheem Sterling on his own in that loft.
He did.
So he's the only one left. Rossinier has said that the club are in conversations with Raheem Sterling. What it feels like, the ultimate solution to this will be a mutual termination. If that is to be the case, where do you see his next move? Is it Premier League? Is it maybe lower down in England? Is it another league? Is it abroad?
So this might be the most difficult question you've ever asked me, because I mean, who can honestly sit there and say what level Raheem Sterling is at this point in time? It's been probably 8 months since he's played a professional game, maybe longer. I don't know exactly when his last performance for Arsenal was. That whole season at Arsenal, I think you could say it was disappointing or underwhelming, or you can insert another word if you like, but it didn't really go to plan. Don't think we saw peak Raheem Sterling at all. So now I'm thinking, right, when was the last time I saw Raheem Sterling play like the Raheem Sterling I know? And it's 2 years ago. It's 2+ years ago. What situation is this guy in? How long would it take him to get back up to sharpness? And how good is he? I don't know. Like, I see him linked to Fulham, and I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, Raheem Sterling's above Fulham. And on the other hand, I'm like, but is he? Like, because I don't know. I genuinely can't answer that question. And so this is the problem here, because we've done enough talking about what the wages that he's on, but not only is he a gamble in that no one can really confidently say how good he is right now, he's a ridiculously expensive gamble. You could barely find a footballer on this planet that costs you more per week if you were to take on his wages, which is, of course, all adding up to being a very restrictive thing for him, which is why he's still in the loft. So maybe the mutual termination is the call that's coming. But, Raheem Sterling has been promised this money on his contract, and he is entitled to sit there and take it if he wants to. So it really is up to him.
Well, Sam, Tighe, Julien Laurent will definitely not be in the loft. That is it for part one. Join us after this very short break as we round up the rest of this week's transfer news. Yeah, welcome back to the Transfer Talk podcast. I'm joined by Julien Laurent and ESPN Sam Tighe, both legends and both very, very good friends of the show.
Yeah, thank you, mate.
Okay,
John's been fired.
Let's talk Bournemouth now, a club that have made over £300 million in player sales over the past few seasons, and they're now looking to reinvest some of that money in this window. Sam, they've confirmed the signing, you mentioned him earlier on in the podcast, of the Hungarian Alex Toth in a deal worth up to £13 million. Is this a good one? Can you fit in?
So first of all, I asked my Hungarian friend how to say this surname, and he said, well, first of all, you can't. But a good attempt might be taught. Alex taught. Yeah. So there's the first thing. Okay. Let's educate everybody,
slap
including
on the wrist for me.
Well, no, I mean, I think we all do our best, Dharmesh.
A taught slap on the wrist for me.
Bear in mind, I'm no Hungarian football expert. However, I've checked in on him. He's been playing in Europe. He played against Rangers quite recently. He looks. And this is when I talk about these conveyor belts of these clubs, and they know exactly what they're trying to sign. When you watch Tort run around, you cannot not be reminded of Alex Scott. It's the way he moves, it's the gait, it's the positions he takes up, it's the way he carries the ball. And for obvious reasons, Bournemouth should be looking to future-proof the idea of their Alex Scott in midfield, because he's going to start drawing. He already has started drawing really admiring glances, right? Everybody knows that Alex Scott's a very good player. He's been on the fringes of the England squad, and it's very possible that the next couple of years somebody offers 40 or 50 million for him. So you want to future-proof that. And that's exactly what I think they're doing here with Alex Tort. So does he fit? Yeah, great. And this is the right price point for one of these kind of, okay, let's bring them in nice and early. And there's no pressure to play this guy straight away, not only because of the level he's come from, because the price is quite suppressed. You do well to spend less than this on a player these days if you're a Premier League club. Aston Villa have just about managed it with a Brazilian winger who's nowhere near ready. They spent about 9 million on him. This is as low as it gets, so I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, one of the big name departures, of course, Sam, in this window from Bournemouth was Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City, but they're not wasting any time at Bournemouth. They've agreed a deal in principle with the Vasco da Gama winger, Rayan, in a total package worth £30.5 million. It would become the club's third biggest ever signing. What can you tell us about this kid?
Lots of Ryans coming into the Premier League these days, aren't there? Cherki, Nwaneri, and this guy, just Rayan. I mean,
I think it's the new Gabriel.
The new Gabriel,
as in
the ubiquitous name. Yes, yeah. It must be. I mean, this is very exciting. This is probably a player at this price point that you do have to chuck into the team. Not only because Semenyo is gone and there's a hole, but at 30 million, and given the status that Rayan carries in the scouting world, I think he's going to be thrown in. He's a powerful winger. Cuts in from the right and shoots, leathers it with his left foot. So he looks like he's up for the fight. The good thing about players that have emerged through Brazil is it's quite a physical league, and the pitches sometimes are really quite bad. So they get used to playing in some pretty tough conditions, some pretty intense games. I feel like it sets them up quite well for the Premier League, whereas some other leagues maybe don't. So I'm quite excited to see him. And he looks like a really explosive and strong winger, which is a very exciting profile.
George, just a final question more generally on Bournemouth. We've talked about the structure that Bournemouth have, that Brighton have, that Palace have, amongst other clubs. Look, we should be impressed about the way they buy players and then sell them on for huge profits. But it does add pressure when they continually sell these players, because they can't really afford to make mistakes, can they? They bought Ivan Ilson, it was a deal worth up to £39.5 million. Bafodi Diakite was £35 million. Rayan is going to be towards the top end of what they spend. So it's got to work, hasn't it, every time they do this?
Yeah, and usually it does, to be fair to them. We talked about the failure at City in terms of signing. Bournemouth don't have many. They've had few, but even Dango Ouattara, for example, they still managed to sell him well to Brentford. So I think they are outstanding in the way they do their business. Even when Rich Hughes leaves, they still have that structure in place with the scouting network, with all the data people and everything to go and find the next Alex Scott or the next Semenyo. Senesi will leave and they will have the next Senesi ready to come as well. It's inevitable. They go and get Krupi Jr. It's a bit different because he's from a club that they also own, but still, he's a wonderful talent. He's only 19 and he will be very soon a 50 or 60 million pound player and will leave Bournemouth. So, and they will have somebody else to play, etc., etc. I admire so much those kind of clubs that are ready for what comes next. And I think from Todd to Ryan, I don't know as much, because I think with Brazilian, there's always a risk that it could be Vinicius or it could be Reiner, and we never really know. We're never too sure, to be honest. But usually they don't get those wrong.
Yeah, okay. Let's quickly round up the rest of the transfer news from this week. Sam, last week, Callum Wilson on his way out of West Ham United, surplus to requirements, no longer in the plans. This week, West Ham United increasingly want Callum Wilson to stay at the club. Shock.
It's amazing what one goal can do.
Big goal.
It was a really big goal. They must have just come to the conclusion that outside of Jared Bowen, he's probably still the best finisher at the club. I don't know. I mean, they need all the help they can get. They shouldn't be in a situation where they're trying to shift off these kinds of players. Even if Callum Wilson could only do the 15 minutes off the bench at the end of each game, he would still provide a sharp point at the end of each game for them to try and nick a goal somewhere. And every goal is absolutely massive. Like Pablo, we can see, will work really, really hard and try and link play. But you're asking a lot of him to step up and score at a Premier League rate in the way that he was in Portugal. Castellanos is the same. He works really hard, but you're asking a lot for him to suddenly transform into a prolific striker. So if they can wear defences down for 75 minutes and then you bring Callum Wilson on at the end, use what you've got. Don't shed off skills and assets when you're in this relegation mix.
Yeah. Good point. Julien, I want to talk to you about someone who was in the news earlier this week, and that was the Bodo Glimt striker Kasper Ho. Scored twice in their Champions League win against no less than Manchester City. I know you covered the game. How impressed were you by him? And a two-part question in this as well. What does it say about the Championship that they can maybe lure players of this quality? And on Norwich City, maybe thinking, oh, God, why did he have to do that this week?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, talk about timing. And often, in the transfer world, as you know, Dams, very well, timing is key in one way or in the other way. And I think in this time, if you'd been Norwich City, you were like, no, don't do this to us now, because one, the value was going up massively, probably a few millions. And two, I think there will be other teams that thought, yes, there's a good player there. We saw him against Spurs. He was outstanding, didn't score in that game. But I thought in terms of what he can provide you, not just in terms of effort, but also scoring, good in the air, not bad technically. There's definitely a player there, even if he's probably a little bit too old for some clubs. But still, and I would love to see him in the Championship. I'm even surprised there's not more Premier League clubs just looking at him and just thinking he won't be that expensive, because Bodo Glimt don't, even their best players, Berg and Hauge, when they left, didn't leave for that much money. It would be the same now for Hogg. So, yeah, I'm a bit surprised. I think it'd be a great coup for Norwich, though, because he looks decent.
You say great coup for Norwich. They're struggling at the wrong end of the Championship, Jules. Is he better than the Championship?
Yeah. No doubt. He's better. Yeah, I think he's better than the Championship. I think he's better than Norwich. But if they can get him, well, go for him for sure.
Yeah. Sam, Fulham have approached Manchester City about a deal for Oscar Bob. That could be a coup for them, couldn't it? Does that seem like a good fit for you?
Yeah, I mean, Oscar Bob, I think, is probably one of the more unlucky players in football over the last year. He looked all set, didn't he, start of last season to assume a role on the right-hand side of City's attack, and there's always that Norwegian connection with Erling Haaland you're kind of looking forward to, and he broke his leg in training just before the season and just disappeared, basically. And City, of course, as we know, have spent quite a lot of money in the last 12 months addressing areas of the pitch. He now competes with Marmoush and Cherki, in addition to all the others. I feel for him, because he's obviously a really good player. And from Fulham's perspective, this is great, because one, high potential player, you can't really sniff at that. Two, they are, as squads go, they're quite old, Fulham. I think Marco Silva might prefer an experienced squad to a younger squad, maybe for consistency purposes. But a lot of Fulham's squad, when I say old here, I mean, I don't want to make us all feel old, but I'm talking about 28 or older, basically. But Fulham looks like a squad to me that could really use players, like an influx of players like Oscar Bob, to bring that age balance back down the other way. And because they're in such a stable position in the table, they can afford to do that.
Yeah, very much so. Julien, I want to talk to you about Mateta Tighe. It's just not working for him, is it? He's been cut from the Champions League squad for Tottenham Hotspur. Dominic Solanke has returned to fitness. Tighe, obviously and clearly unhappy about his current situation, but what's made it worse is that as it stands, he won't be allowed to leave, given the number of injuries that Tottenham Hotspur have got at the minute. Is he right to feel hurt about his treatment and about what's happened with him?
Yeah, I think a little bit. He's very frustrated right now, and very understandably so. I thought he was good, for example, in the FA Cup game against Villa, and then Frank took him off. I don't think he played that badly against West Ham, and it took him off again. Then there's the Champions League squad, the announcement that they dropped him from that to bring Solanke in. Okay, Solanke scored against Dortmund on Tuesday night. Great. The luckiest goal you would ever see in the history of football, but still, no problem. I still think there's a role for Tighe in this team, and yeah, he probably hasn't fulfilled all his incredible potential yet. I can get the frustration from a Spurs point of view, club and fans. I completely understand, and I'm with them. He's much more capable of much more than that too. But you also have to play on his strength, not keep moving him from different positions all the time in a team that in itself is not consistent in the starting lineup, because Frank changes the team pretty much for every game. It's never the same 11 due to injuries, but also due to the fact that he doesn't know himself the strongest 11 that he has, even when people are fit. So I feel a bit for Tighe. I wonder if, for now, he'd be better off going on loan somewhere. And we know Paris FC have been interesting to bring him back home to Paris. He might not. He might want a bigger club than Paris FC, who are fighting against relegation in Ligue 1. But he needs to play. That's all he needs right now. And I'm not sure how much he's going to play at Spurs for the second half of the season.
Just very quickly on that then, Jules, are you surprised, given the limited game time he's had, that Tottenham actually did the deal to get him on a permanent?
Yeah, 40 million. If you for not playing him much, for not putting him into the Champions League squad, it makes no sense, really. Because I think when they made that deal permanent, he was buzzing. He was like, "This is great." Not that he showed much in the second half of last season, by the way, but he thought, "Okay, this, I still have done enough for them to make that move permanent." He was super excited, and I think if he has felt a very underwhelming season for him. And from a Spurs point of view, you wonder, why did you spend all that money then? If now the only reason you're keeping him is because you've got so many injuries that you actually need bodies on the bench, and he's not even part of your plans in the Champions League, which is a bad thing for a young player, for any player of any age. You want to play in the Champions League, and to see your name not even including in that squad is sad.
Sam, let's talk Emiliano Martinez. We've spoken about him before in a previous transfer window, and you were very worried, I recall, about losing him then. Inter Milan are exploring the conditions of a deal to sign Martinez in the summer. Reasons to be worried again for you?
Less worried these days. Yeah. If you speak to Villa fans, they see Martinez as, for what he is, which is a quality player, but also as a bit of an issue that sort of tends to hang over the club. There tends to be a fair bit of drama surrounding him, a lot of unknown. He gets injured quite a lot at the moment, coming off at half time or pulling up in the warm up at least once of each this season. It's starting to get to the point where I think fans would be okay with him to go. Obviously, Villa are under financial pressures, and he is on a very big contract. So that would alleviate some of the issues. Also, it makes it easier to say this stuff, doesn't it? When, quite frankly, he hasn't played that well this season. He's below his esteemed usual level. So this is starting to feel like it's going to come to its natural conclusion, and Villa just need to make sure that they are well prepared for that. Because when it started to rear its head at the end of the summer window, suddenly I'm seeing Villa are scoping out Diogo Costa, Villa are scoping out this guy. And I'm like, that all feels very rushed. That does not look like a good process to me. Whereas if you know it's coming, you can prepare for it properly.
I was really, really hoping there, Sam, that when I mentioned Emiliano Martinez and you said, not so worried this time, I wanted you to revisit Unai Emery's fantastic interview.
Would you like me to do it?
Yes, let's just try it. So, Emiliano Martinez.
Marco Bizot.
Brilliant. That's all I wanted. Julien, another interesting move is Ethan Nwaneri going from Arsenal to Marseille. We were always saying from the outset that this was going to be a quiet window for Arsenal, and that's still going to be the case with regard to incomings. But this might have surprised a few, but should we really be surprised given the game time he's had? And I think Arsenal have really done due diligence on this, haven't they? Because there's been lots of interest in him, and they really see Marseille under Roberto De Zerbi as the best place for Nwaneri for the rest of the season to continue his development, right?
Yeah, he needs to play. Really, he's 18, and the depth in this Arsenal squad is so big that now he's probably the third pick in the pecking order for the Saka position, behind Saka and Madueke, probably for the Odegaard position, behind Odegaard and Eze as well. And he's a wonderful talent. There's no doubt. We saw that last season when he played quite a lot of games. So he just needs to play. It's not happening for him right now, Arsenal, because of those reasons and competition for places, but there's still a great player there in his own development. So he could have stayed in the Premier League. There were clubs like Bournemouth, for example, who were really keen with and agreed to all the terms that Arsenal wanted, including, which is quite new-ish in a way, but you pay a penalty if he doesn't play as many games as you've agreed when you took him on loan, which the French have a little bit struggling to get their heads around. What if he's not good at the start with Marseille? They won't play him if he's not good enough, but what, they would have to pay Arsenal a penalty fee? Yeah, they would have to. But De Zerbi is really happy that he's joining. The way they play, obviously, will suit Nwaneri. They will play him centrally as a 10 because they need a better player than what they have right now in that position. So I'm really curious to see how well he does in Ligue 1, and hopefully for them, they will qualify next week for the playoff of the Champions League, and he'll be also able to play in the Champions League from February.
I've seen some questions from some Arsenal fans, but also some neutrals asking why Arsenal would live with the idea of losing Nwaneri, just even for depth. But to hammer it home, Kepa has started more games this season than Nwaneri. And if your manager does not trust you, bear in mind the situation Arsenal were moving into here, where it's all on the line, like title challenge, Champions League is a possibility. They're 7 from 7. They're still in the cups. Like, this is high-stakes stuff. And if your manager doesn't trust you and doesn't want to throw you in, then there's no value for you. So as talented as he is, and as good as we know he is, right now he just needs to go and play somewhere else for sure.
Yeah. Finally, Sam, let's talk Sunderland's Wilson Isidore. Bit of a cult hero at the Stadium of Light, isn't he? He's attracting interest from Everton and Nottingham Forest. What have you made of him and how he's adapted to the Premier League?
Yeah, I really like Isidore. I mean, he's been a pretty damn good striker for a number of years, and it was probably a shock to see him drop into the Championship in the first place, because he'd shown a good level elsewhere, and he showed a good level, a Champions League level, I would suggest, at Zenit, even before he dropped into the Championship. So I remember him dropping in there, and I'm thinking, wow, how have they managed to get away with that? Then he scored like 7 games in a row, and I was like, I knew it. And then he didn't score for like 8 games, and I went quiet. But he started this season up front. He seems to have lost track of the position, maybe with Brian Brobby coming to the fore. I think he's a Premier League quality striker. Everton, Forest, Villa, go for it.
Sam, friend, colleague, legend, it's been a pleasure.
Love it.
Jules, which order should we do it in? Legend, legend, friend, more than a colleague. Whoa, gosh.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you guys for having me. Loved it.
Fantastic stuff. And thank you to everyone who's been listening to this latest edition of the Transfer Talk podcast, wherever you've been listening, in your cars or on the train, in the wind or in the rain, in your house or in the shed, on your couch or in your bed, on the hills or in the valleys, in the streets or in the alleys, out for a run or maybe a walk. Thanks for listening to Transfer Talk.
And that's for sure.